Hey everyone. So if you were paying attention to the news, I mean, how can you not? Everything fucking sucks right now. So aside from COVID, which has been going on for a while now, there's also riots over police brutality and everything, and that's well, I don't want to talk about that right now, but it's pretty horrible, and it's sort of focusing a lot of attention. On top of that, I'm going through some pretty rough stuff in my personal life right now. I haven't actually had a good night's sleep in about 13 days now, unlucky for some. Not sure if you can see the bags under my eyes. I'm keeping it natural light here in the living room. So I figured, why not bring back Dave's Film Faves, the stream of videos that I haven't done in like 2 to 3 years, that I keep talking about bringing back and talking about some of my favorite yet underappreciated films. Because, talking about films I love will, maybe cheer me up, maybe cheer you up because everything is oppressively bad right now. I don't know. So for the 30 or so people who watch my videos, maybe this will be a little bit of a distraction from everything, as much as I'm using the recording of the video to distract me from how horrible everything is right now. So, as you might be able to tell from the poster behind me, today I'm going to talk about Escape from LA, a movie. So, there's a lot of movies that I like that other people don't, and I don't understand why people don't like them. I understand why people don't like Escape from LA. Perhaps I should go into the background of this movie. So, in 1982, I want to say it was 82. Maybe it was 81. Does it even say on here? 81. My apologies. John Carpenter released a movie called Escape from New York. Escape from New York is the story of a semi-post-apocalyptic year of 1997, where crime has skyrocketed so much that the U.S. government has walled off the island of Manhattan and turned it into a prison for violent criminals. This being a sort of satire based around spiking crime rates in the late 70s, early 80s, and especially New York City being a very violent place at the time, as opposed to the tourist attraction it normally is now when there's not police riots going on. And that movie became a cult classic over the years. The Kurt Russell character of Snake Pliskin, where Kurt Russell's kind of doing this semi-Clint Eastwood impersonation, really took off because he's the sort of quasi-libertarian anti-hero. And it's the movie that sort of introduced the idea of Air Force One having an escape pod, which was later used in the movie Air Force One in '97 with Harrison Ford. To the best of my knowledge, the actual Air Force One does not have any escape pods. I think some White House contact eventually confirmed that when the Harrison Ford movie came out. But it's got Donald Pleasance, it's got Isaac Hayes, it's got Adrienne Barbeau. It's a really good movie, and the reason I'm not doing a video about that one is because Escape from New York is solidly a cult classic. People know about it, people like it, it's great. Whereas Escape from LA, I feel, does not get the appreciation it deserves. It's mostly just kind of written off as a bad sequel, and I don't think it deserves that, because it's a very, very fun, enjoyable film. So, Escape from LA came out in August of 1996. It was about a week before or a week after my 13th birthday. And Escape from LA is kind of the perfect movie for a 13-year-old, 13-year-old boy at least. So I remember seeing the trailers. And the trailers is Kurt Russell. He's usually kind of speaking into the camera, and he's saying his like gruff, cool guy slogans. And they show the scene in the movie about the Bangkok rules, where he's got a line of people with guns pointed at him. He's like, hey, nobody draw until this can hits the ground. And he throws the can in the air, and then he draws his guns and kills everybody, and then the can hits the ground and he goes, draw. And that's a fun moment in the movie, and it's one of the more famous scenes in the film. And I thought, wow, this is cool, but part of what also flashed on the trailer were the words, Snake is back, the Kurt Russell character being Snake Plissken, and I'm like, Snake is back? Who the fuck is Snake? So then, 13-year-old me looks into this. I think at the time I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly. Entertainment Weekly, while it sucks now and is just sort of a magazine for doctors' waiting rooms, it used to be a really good magazine written for the layman about the actual film industry, where it wasn't just puff pieces like People Magazine, and eventually that's what Entertainment Weekly became. But back in the early and mid 90s, even up until some of the late 90s, Entertainment Weekly was solid. Not up to the level of Variety or Hollywood Reporter, but it was a solid magazine. And they used to do a summer movie preview issue where they do little blurbs of every single movie that was slated to come out that summer. They also did like a winter and a spring and that kind of thing. And I think it was the article about Escape from LA, because it had the biggest blurb for August. I guess they were expecting it to be the biggest blockbuster in August. That didn't happen. But it said, like, oh, this is a sequel to Escape from New York. And at the time, I had not heard of Escape from New York. So, being excited to see Escape from LA based on the trailer, and then finding out it's a sequel to this movie, I'm like, well, how can I see this original movie? Obviously, streaming wasn't a thing. The movie was on VHS, but in 1996, that VHS was out of print. And I don't know if it's one of the first movies to have a director's cut, but there was like a special edition VHS director's cut. I don't know what the difference between the theatrical and the director's cut is. I think they may have just put in this deleted prologue about a bank robbery. I don't know. And that was later on, like, the DVD releases and stuff. But for a while, you couldn't really buy the movie because the VHS was out of print. So you had to find a video store that had one of the old out-of-print VHSs. Now, I grew up in Rhode Island. At the time, I don't remember if it had already become a Blockbuster Video, but the major video theater, or the video store chain in Rhode Island was called Major Video. That was the chain one. There were some mom-and-pop stores, but most of the video stores were Major Video. And then later, Major Video went out of business and Blockbuster bought them. And then for a while, it was Blockbuster and Hollywood Video before the video stores died. But my local video store, whether it was Major or Blockbuster by '96, they had one copy of the out-of-print VHS. And I kept trying to rent it, but that one copy was always taken out. And while the video store had I think you could only rent a new release for 48 hours, but any of the old catalog titles you could rent for like a full 5 to 7 days. So for weeks, I kept trying to get this tape at the moment that it wasn't rented out, but people kept renting it, probably because the sequel was coming out and you couldn't see the original, because I don't think I've ever seen the original broadcast on regular TV. I'm sure it might be on like HBO and stuff nowadays. But at the time, it wasn't on cable. It wasn't. This movie was unavailable unless you could rent the VHS. So I kept going week after week. I kept like having like my mother check the video store after work every day, waiting for it to come in. I'd be calling the video store to be like, "Hey, when's this video due back?" And sometimes they just tell you, and you try to time it up right. I used to do that a lot when there were movies I wanted to see that the video store only had a couple copies of because nobody else wanted to see them but me. Remember, Kids in the Hall, Brain Candy was one of those movies too that I had a really hard time trying to rent. And eventually, I rented it. And obviously, it was an old, out-of-print VHS, probably struck in the late 80s, early 90s, so the picture was horrible. It was deteriorated from lots of views. But I got to see the movie, and I really liked Escape from New York. It's very dark and moody. It's got your John Carpenter score. You got to love those moody synth scores. And it's a good piece of just sort of apocalyptic social satire for the time. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then that got me hyped up to see the movie, and then finally, because the release of Escape from LA ended up timing up with like my 13th birthday, my father at the time, he was the one who ended up taking me on, I don't remember if it was opening night, I think it was opening night, which is why I say it was like right before or right after my birthday. It opened like kind of that weekend, I think. And I just loved Escape from LA. Later on, I bought Escape from LA on VHS. I watched that VHS a lot. And then finally, it just came out on a special edition Blu-ray. The reason I have the poster is because if you pre-ordered the Blu-ray from Shout Factory, you get the poster. I pre-ordered it like 2 months ago. The poster's sold out now, but I pre-ordered it back when the poster was available, so there it hangs now. And I like the artwork. Because originally it was just on, there was like a bare bones, no extra Blu-ray that I own, and I'll donate to Video Vortex whenever they reopen. But yeah, that was all this movie had. So let me get some of the negatives out of the way about this movie and the reason people hate it. Escape from LA has absolutely atrocious CGI. Even by 1996 standards, like I think the budget for the movie was about 50 mil. It bombed, by the way. The movie did no business. But even for the time, the CGI is bad. There's like these bad helicopter shots that look like they come from an old CD-ROM game. There's like a submarine chase through the water where he's getting to the island of LA. There's a really laughable surfboard sequence that's done really badly between Kurt Russell and Peter Fonda's character. CGI is bad where it's used. It's still mostly practical though. So the CGI is bad, and a lot of people criticize Escape from LA because it's one of the first examples I can think of what today we call a soft reboot, where a movie is a sequel and it takes place in the same continuity of the original film, but it's pretty much just a remake of that original film while being a sequel at the same time. Force Awakens, being a carbon copy of A New Hope, is an example, and that's an example I happen to despise. So the fact that it was so similar, almost like beat for beat of Escape from New York, people didn't like that. And in general, I do hate sort of soft reboots like that, but I think Escape from LA works simply because at the time, Escape from New York, because it was out of print, while it did have a cult following, that following was very small. Escape from New York has a bigger following now because it's been in print for a while. I mean, I got the Steelbook from Shout Factory. Before that, there was special edition DVDs that came out when the DVD craze came out. There was other versions of the Blu-ray. So by the time you get to like the early 2000s, the film is widely available and its fan base grew beyond the very, very small fan base from the VHS or the Laserdisc, or even the theatrical, whoever saw Escape from New York in its original theatrical run. So doing a soft reboot for a film that was very hard to get a copy of is a bit more understandable as opposed to doing one of a movie that nearly everyone's seen, like A New Hope. And it did do something a little bit different, whereas the tone of Escape from New York is very serious, melancholy, moody, dark. And Escape from LA is a bit more over the top, it's a bit more cartoony, and it's a bit more fun. And some people didn't like that. Kurt Russell as Snake Pliskin, he's not winking at the audience, he's still playing the same Snake Pliskin of Escape from New York. But the supporting cast around him is way more cartoony. And I do kind of like that. So, I should get into the plot of this. It's very similar to Escape from New York, though. With a couple tweaks. So, because obviously, Escape from New York coming out in 81, Reaganomics, crime, all that stuff, all of the things John Carpenter and myself hate, you know, not as satirical as They Live, which seems to be like the pinnacle of John Carpenter's fuck the system movies, but there. So Escape from LA comes out in 1996. 1996 is smack dab in the middle of the Bill Clinton administration, so, you know, barely center-right triangulation politics, booming economy. Things were, if you were a white male, the 90s were good for you. And Escape from LA takes a little bit of a different, as opposed to being sort of about crime and economics, it's more about like evangelicals and moral stuff. And you sort of start to see that happen, where the religious right was trying to counteract Bill Clinton, the Contract with America, Newt Gingrich, that kind of stuff, or Contract on America, the Pat Robertsons. So it's about, there is a right-wing evangelical zealot who predicts a massive earthquake is going to take out the sinners of LA. By coincidence, that happens, that there's a giant earthquake, and that earthquake ends up physically separating Los Angeles from the mainland. And so because he predicted this, the Constitution's amended, and this right-wing zealot is given a lifetime term as president dictator of the United States. And all morally undesirable people are sent to L.A. And that isn't just regular criminals who commit murder and all that stuff like Escape from New York. It also involves atheists and drug abusers and anarchists and communists and basically anyone that the religious right hates, people at abortions, they all go to the island of LA. And there's like a perimeter of guard towers on the mainland and yeah, and so that's it. And everyone there is a life sentence. No one gets out of LA. The movie never explains, so you can't get back to the mainland of the U.S., but it never explains why you can't leave on the other side. I don't know if there's like another perimeter to keep them from like going to Japan or Hawaii or something, but whatever. It's a silly sci-fi movie. So Escape from L.A. takes place, since it's in the same continuity of Escape from New York, where 1997 was the future, this one takes place in 2013, which is now the past from here. And Snake Pliskin is captured, and in the original film, Snake Pliskin he's a former Purple Heart decorated soldier who becomes disillusioned with the U.S. government and becomes sort of like a bank robber criminal type person. And then they put something in his neck that's going to kill him if he doesn't go and save the president after he's crash landed over the island of New York. And in Escape from L.A., the president's daughter becomes sort of a hippie left-winger, and she becomes enamored with one of the opposition leaders who is in the island of L.A., going by Cuervo Jones. And Cuervo Jones is meant to be like a Che Guevara type character. He looks like Che Guevara with the beard and the beret. The film specifically says he's Peruvian, so he's sort of based on a Shining Path, and that's too, but basically like left-wing guerrilla militant. And so she becomes enamored with him when they have like virtual reality dates. And so she steals a war weapon and goes to LA to bring it to Cuervo. And the war weapon is basically a very powerful satellite EMP where you can target specific countries and you can shut off all of their electronics, making them completely vulnerable to an attack, which the US government in this universe wants to use to attack the Third World. Because the Third World is they're in a Cold War with the U.S. So, Cuba and Central America and all that good stuff. But Cuervo Jones, obviously, he may want to use it against the U.S., and so the Third World and the proletariat can rise up from there. You're going to notice at this point that, with the exception of the fact that Cuervo Jones is kind of a misogynist jerk and wants to kill our main character. Aside from all of that, I'm mostly on Cuervo Jones' side. But so Snake Pliskin is captured, and they put a virus in him, a fast-acting flu that'll kill him in, I think, 16 hours or something, unless he can go in and retrieve the weapon. The president also wants his daughter killed. He has no sentimental attachment to her. So, being forced to do this again, he goes to the island of LA, and he meets a colorful cast of characters in trying to get this weapon back from Cuervo Jones. Some of that cast includes Peter Fonda, who is a sort of the leader of like a surf dude cult from the beach. One of my favorites is Map to the Stars Eddie, played by the great Steve Buscemi, who's sort of a huckster, shyster, wannabe Hollywood agent. There's a lot of satire about Los Angeles and Hollywood and that kind of culture, which I imagine John Carpenter is very happy with, because after his great heyday of the 80s, John Carpenter wasn't getting some of the best scripts and work. I think, I don't know if he had any movies between In the Mouth of Madness and this, but his work was drying up and he wasn't getting as many good things to do. And then after Escape from LA, he did movies that weren't as well received, like Vampires, which I liked, and Ghosts of Mars, which everyone hates, but it has its moments. And I don't want to talk about The Ward. That's a horrible movie, and that was sadly the last theatrical film he made. So you can obviously see his hatred of Hollywood and LA culture seep through in the movie. And there's some good action sequences. Like Escape from New York is, even though it's technically an action movie, there's not a lot of action set pieces in that because it was limited by the budget. Escape from LA definitely has a bigger budget, so there are more action set pieces. There's like a motorcycle gun chase. There's a parasailing hang glider attack. There's some fun stuff in the movie. And then there's satire, like Bruce Campbell is, from Evil Dead, he's unrecognizable under makeup to look like he's had a lot of bad plastic surgery as the Surgeon General of Beverly Hills, and there's a really fun sequence where him and his, like, plastic surgery-obsessed cult, like, kidnap people so that they can harvest their parts and stuff to put on their own and make themselves more, like, Hollywood beautiful. There's a lot of great, like, funny little moments like that. I want to say, a lot of people don't like the over-the-top, goofy tone of it. So if you're not gonna if you want the movie to be as serious as Escape from New York, it's not gonna be that. And I know a lot of people hated it for that. And there's a lot of other things, like in Escape from New York, after Snake is captured by the villain, in Villain it's Isaac Hayes in that movie, the Duke of New York, and here it's Cuervo Jones. But in Escape from New York, they have him do like a cage fight with someone, and in this movie they have something I thought. A lot of people apparently don't like it, but I thought it was kind of fun, where full-length basketball court, 2 hoops, and basically you have 10 seconds to make a shot, and you have to make 5 shots in a row, and if you miss a basket, if you don't make the basket within the shot clock, you'll get shot and killed. So you have to keep running back and forth and not miss any baskets and all this stuff, and it's a kind of an endurance test, and I thought that was a cool idea for something to put someone through, because it's almost impossible. Apparently people didn't like that. They wanted another cage fight or some shit. There's a lot of... the movie makes me laugh on purpose because there is a lot of funny stuff in it. And there's a lot of cool moments. Snake still gets to be a badass even in this cartoonish universe. Like there's a sequence where 2 of the people of the United States Police Force, which is very apropos today, where there's a worldwide militarized police. They're walking him to his nuclear submarine to take to the island of LA, and they've already given him all his weapons and everything. And before he's about to get in the sub, he's like, when I come back, who gives me the antidote to the virus you've put into me? And the people are like, oh, it's just someone on that. He's like, any of you? No. And they're good. And then he fires the gun at them like he's just going to kill them. But, they saw that ahead of time and put the first clip with blanks. Fun. I guess I should go into some spoilers here. If there's one... People who don't like this movie still like the ending. Because the ending is really nihilistic and cool for this. Similar to the ending of Escape from New York. Escape from New York, aside from getting the president, they also want this cassette tape. I don't remember the reason why. It's actually been a while since I've watched Escape from New York, but they need this cassette tape to play to stop a war or whatever, and he does a bait and switch where he switches it off with the cassette tape that the Ernest Borgnine cabbie plays. So in this movie, they've got the little keypad targeting device that controls the EMP, and it's a bit more complicated, but he does another bait and switch. And then after that, he has the device, and he ends up putting in the worldwide code, which apropos is 666, and then activates it to make the entire Earth shut down and taken to the Dark Ages. And the movie just kind of ends with Snake proud of himself, taking good old-fashioned stick matches, lighting a cigarette, and taking a big drag. Because in this universe, cigarettes, red meat, premarital sex, all of that's illegal, evangelical shit. So, and just the balls to go through with that ending, I thought is great. And even people who don't like the movie like that. There is one aspect of the film that is hashtag problematic under today's parlance, but at the time was seen as interesting. And that is Pam Greer, Coffee, blaxploitation films, great Pam Greer. She's playing a post-op male-to-female transgender character who used to be a member of Snake's posse called Carjack Malone. And Pam Greer, even, there was a big deal about her letting her armpit hair grow out, so there's a scene where she reaches her arm up and you see her armpit hair. And there's a whole thing about, Snake Pliskin dead naming her and using the wrong gender for her, and she's very pissed off that she's not going that he's not calling her by her proper name now. I guess casting a non-trans actor for that role and maybe kind of using it a little bit for a joke, because there's a scene where when they first meet up and Snake goes to meet her not knowing that she used to be he, and he starts running his hand up her thigh, grabs her crotch, because that's where, back when she was a he used to keep a pistol between his legs, and so he like grabs the crotch and then pulls the gun out. So there's some stuff like that doesn't really hold up as well in 2020. But at the time, it wasn't really criticized. It was seen as sort of, from the contemporaneous reviews, it was seen as sort of brave that Pam Greer would take that role, or that it would sort of have this view of transgender people. Also, for people who don't remember or weren't really cognizant to aware, there wasn't much awareness about being transgender around the time this movie came out. I'm talking 96. So I don't think certainly as a 13-year-old boy, I didn't know, but I don't think there was a lot of the populace knowing the difference between someone who was transgender and someone who was simply a transvestite. So I think a lot of characters like this in movies, they're just written off as like Tootsie or Mrs. Doubtfire or Tu Wong Fu. They're written off as like drag queens or as transvestites and not as transgender. But having watched the movie again recently, since I wanted to take the special edition for a spin, it's very clear in the movie that the Pam Greer character is meant to be transgender and not a transvestite. So it doesn't quite hold up that well. It maybe holds up slightly better than other movies from the era that tried to do something with transgender characters. But still, yeah. But, I mean, you can't expect a movie from 1996 to hold up with moving societal issues like that. But, that being said, I feel like part of the reason Escape from LA didn't do well is because it probably came out a couple of years too early. 1996, even though the evangelical right still was happening in Congress, I mean, the Republicans had a majority in the House during that kind of time. There's still a lot of like the Pat Robertson type people. But the evangelicals really didn't become sort of a major force to be reckoned with in the U.S. government until the George W. Bush administration, where, you know, they had a fucking Jesus-freak president and all this shit. As well as an attack on people who were considered, like, immoral and you know, attack on, you know, church-state separation, that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff happened more under the Bush administration. If Escape from L.A. had come out in, like, 2004... it probably would have, more of the audience probably would have gotten it, as opposed to releasing it in 1996 when people didn't really see them as much of a threat. I mean, I don't remember if this was before or after the Republicans tried a government shutdown and they completely lost that public relations war. 1996 was the midterm election for, it was Bush versus Dole. But Dole wasn't really seen as an evangelical, not like a Pat Robertson type or a Rick Santorum type. So if the movie had come out a hair under 10 years later, maybe the satire would have been more apparent or at the tip of people's tongues at that point. But 1996, it maybe missed the boat a little bit. So in that way, it is a little bit ahead of its time to view that, you know, an evangelical dictatorish type president would move undesirables to an island. I mean, this movie came out pre-Guantanamo, pre-CIA torture, you know, pre the post 9/11 super Christianity, super militaristic shit that happened off with all that stuff. Yeah, if Escape from LA came out in 2004, you know, that the Bush Kerry election type stuff when the Iraq War was on the palette, everyone would have gotten this movie. So and it's interesting watching it now, because obviously in 2020 we're dealing with a president who sees himself as sort of a Mussolini type dictator, but I mean he makes token asides to the evangelicals. I mean he just tear gassed a bunch of peaceful protesters to hold up Bible, like a book your grandmother got you for Christmas that you're going to donate the next day and you'll never read in front of a church. But he's not really an evangelical. He's just a wannabe. He's a wannabe like Muammar Gaddafi type figure. But still seeing the sort of super right wing evangelical future of this movie and comparing it with what the super right wing has become, which is way more just not even theocratic fascist, just fascist, like Tea Party, like fake libertarian. Which is also kind of funny that the anti-hero of the movie is sort of this nihilistic libertarian who just hates all government, hates all beliefs, hates all societies, only in it strictly for himself. And that's sort of the hero of the movie. I don't know if Snake Plissken is really meant to be a cipher for John Carpenter. John Carpenter obviously is not right-wing at all. I mean, They Live, even though John Carpenter has claimed that They Live is not meant to be Marxist in any way, that movie is just fucking dripping with Marxism. Whether he meant to or not, the movie is. One of those things where, directorial intent doesn't necessarily mean that the movie's gonna say what he wants it to say. So I'm not sure if John Carpenter would view himself more as a nihilistic libertarian like a Snake Plissken, but it is kind of funny that the movie is sort of about this nihilistic libertarian who's fighting against the evangelical right-wing U.S. government and the guerrilla left wing of Cuervo Jones. Even before he shuts down the world, he has some sort of line about, like, shut down the third world, you win, they lose. Shut down you guys, you lose, they win. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And so it's sort of like making everyone blacked out equal is leveling the playing field. I mean, even if my politics are definitely more Cuervo Jones's than they are Snake Plissken's, you kind of have to admire someone who at least talks the talk and walks the walk and isn't disingenuous with their beliefs. So, but look, it's a goofy movie. I'll say that. It is not literally the movie a goofy movie, but it's a goofy movie. There's a lot of funny things in it. There's a lot of silly, stupid things in it. The characters are way over the top and cartoonish. But the satire still works, even if we've sort of moved beyond the evangelical phase and are into this other, like, alt-right fascist phase to fight against. But it still has those themes of militarism, about totalitarianism, about the repressive state apparatus. Things are still very much at large now, and it's just fun. It's just a really fun movie. Like, when I watched it a couple days ago again, and I don't remember the last time I watched Escape from LA before this past week. It's been, 10 years, something like that. Because again, I used to have it on VHS, and then I did buy the Bare Bones Blu-ray, but I don't think I ever watched the Bare Bones Blu-ray. I think I just bought it and just kind of left it somewhere. So it's been a long time, and it's still fun. I mean, when you review a movie that used to be a nostalgic favorite, you kind of have to wonder how much of your appreciation of the film is totally based on nostalgia and the fact that this is a really cool movie if you're a 13-year-old boy in 1996, and how much of it is the film in and of itself's quality. And I do think the movie still has quality. The CGI sucks. I'm not going to defend the CGI. Hell, on the extras, the special effects guy who they interview doesn't defend the special effects. He just kind of explains why they suck. But you kind of get the feeling, watching the extras, that even the people who made the movie don't really like it. Like, they made the movie because they like the Escape from New York, and they don't like Escape from LA, its final product, for whatever reason. But I really like this movie. I really do think it's very entertaining and very fun. Now, could it have been more different or plot-wise from Escape from New York? Sure. Could they have kept more in tone with the original Escape from New York? Yeah, they could. But I think it's okay that this film in particular was doing the soft reboot thing before soft reboots were a thing, because of the aforementioned circumstances that were going into it. I mean, I do hate a lot of soft reboots these days. My hatred of Force Awakens is well known. I absolutely despise what J.J. Abrams did. I think it represents a complete lack of imagination in the worst way they could have possibly done a sequel to Return of the Jedi. But whatever. It's also why I probably like Last Jedi when a lot of people don't. It's because I like the idea that Rian Johnson saw Force Awakens and was like, fuck you, this sucks, and just tried to dismantle everything that JJ had fucked up with that movie. But I think Escape from LA works enough. Now, after Escape from LA, if it had been successful, I know the next idea they wanted to do, or at least John Carpenter wanted to do, was Escape from Earth. That didn't happen because Escape from LA bombed. I think the original script for John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars, that was going to be a Snake Plissken vehicle, and then when it wasn't, the Ice Cube character in that movie ended up taking over. I don't know how much was changed between then and now, or then and when that movie came out, but I know... I haven't watched Ghost of Mars. I saw Ghosts of Mars in a theater alone when it first came out, and that's the only time I've watched Ghosts of Mars. I liked it when it came out. I knew it wasn't very good, but I still enjoyed it anyway. I don't know if I'd like it now, if I watched it again. But, I don't know, maybe if it had been Snake Plissken and Ghosts of Mars instead, it would have been better. And then a few years back, I say a few, it was probably 10 years ago now, there was a movie with Guy Pearce that was pretty much just Escape from New York on a space station. And I can't remember if it was called like Lock Up or Lockout or something like that. And the movie was so similar to Escape from New York that John Carpenter actually sued Luc Besson, who produced it. I don't think he directed it, but Luc Besson did produce it, and won for copyright infringement. That's how similar that movie was. And that movie was actually really fun. I actually really liked that movie. I can't remember the name of it now, but Escape from New York ripoff on Space Station was a very fun movie, and I really liked it. That movie also had really bad special effects during a car chase sequence, by the way. But the fact that the movie was so similar that a copyright suit won, because most lawsuits where somebody claims that another filmmaker ripped off their film or their script or whatever, they almost always are thrown away. So to win a lawsuit, yeah. I should have looked up the name of it before this video, but that's a good movie. You could almost treat that as like an unofficial Escape from Earth. And I know they've talked for a long time about doing a remake of Escape from New York. And a remake, not an Escape from LA soft reboot, which is a shame because I'd still fucking love to see fucking 80-year-old Kurt Russell. I know he's playing Santa Claus for Netflix movies now, but I'd still love to see another Escape movie. But they've been talking about doing a reboot. I think Robert Rodriguez was attached to direct one once, and Gerard Butler was attached to play Snake at one point. I don't like that casting. And I know back when Ain't It Cool News was a popular website and people used to leak unproduced scripts to them before we knew that Harry Knowles was a despicable human being, I remember there was a review of the potential screenplay for the Escape from New York remake, and everyone hated it, and it sounded like it was a horrible, like, it involved clones, and it was a shitty script, so I'm glad they didn't do that. I don't know what the state of the possible remake is now. I remember there was some news a little bit ago, and there was some director attached, but I don't know. It's been in development hell forever, and I don't know if they'll ever actually make it, because I honestly don't know. Escape from New York obviously has a fan base, and I do remember when Escape from LA came out, there was a comic book series that sort of tied in, and it was called like The Adventures of Snake Plissken. It may have only come out for one issue. I think I still own the issue too. And it took place between New York and LA, and it was about like Snake Plissken, and he fights like a giant, like almost an ED-209 type robot. And I think there's been other comic book series. I think there was one where Snake Plissken joins forces with Kurt Russell's character from Big Trouble in Little China. What was his name? Jack Burton. And I think that's in years since, I think there's been other comic books about Snake Plissken and that kind of stuff. Maybe they go into what happened at Cleveland, which is mentioned in all of them. I do like the running joke of people always thinking that Snake Plissken is taller, because Snake Plissken is a notorious and somewhat famous outlaw in these movies, almost like a Billy the Kid or Jesse James or John Dillinger type person. But yeah, I know there's lots of different spin-off and other media. I believe they were going to do an Escape from New York video game back around the PlayStation 2 era, and it didn't get finished, or the company went bankrupt or something. Supposedly Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid movie video games is based a little bit on Snake Plissken. I've never played any of them, but apparently they're very popular. I think there's like 5 of them or something. But it'd be cool to have just an Escape from New York /LA/Earth, Cleveland, whatever video game. That'd be great. That'd be really fun. I'm able to do it for the PS5. I don't know who owns the license at this point. But yeah, I'd say you can enjoy LA without seeing New York, and certainly a lot of people enjoy New York and they don't enjoy LA. But I think both films are absolutely worth viewing. Escape from New York, I mean, you got Isaac Hayes and Donald Pleasance and Kurt Russell and Ernest Borgnine. It's Lee Van Cleef. It's a really good movie. I still highly recommend Escape from New York, but I mean, most people are going to say they like Escape from New York, especially people who like cult movies and fans of John Carpenter. Escape from LA, I feel like I am alone on a hill, and it's a hill I'm dying on. A lot of people do not like this movie. They just don't. And I kind of understand them if they don't like the caveats that I mentioned. But that being said, I really love this movie. I have fun with it. I watched it a ton on VHS afterwards. If you're a 13-year-old boy who is a little angry with the world, this is right up your alley. And if you're an adult and you haven't seen Escape from LA, I still think it's a fun ride, and I would recommend viewing it. And that's why it's earned a place somewhere on Dave's Faves. I don't know if it's in my top 50 or top 100, maybe not even there, but it's one of those movies that I'm like, yeah, no one else likes it, but I do, and it deserves another look-see. So, that's this video. I know because of COVID and the quarantine and everything, I've been hoping to do videos more regularly, and for the past couple weeks I have, but honestly, my life sucks right now. Going through a really tough personal time, so I'm finding myself a bit too lethargic to do that. But I'm going to at least try to still make some videos just to keep my mood up, because they're fun. That's the only reason I make these videos. I don't make money off them, really. But they still might be fewer and far between than I had been doing. I've been doing like multiple videos a week for April. So, yeah. Thanks, and see you.